Good morning. It is August 11th, 2023. We're going to be discussing Hunter Biden today. This one's going to get fun. All right. So we're covering Hunter Biden, The Crisis on Maui, and an Appalachian Reading Guide. The New York Times by David Leonhardt. Here we go. Is it a scandal? The Hunter Biden case has become the latest example of America's dueling realities. If you're a Republican, or anyone not a Democrat, there is a good chance you believe that Democrats and the mainstream media are deliberately minimizing a scandal that calls into question President Biden's honesty and threatens his presidency. I know some conservative readers of The Morning feel this way because they've written to me to say so. If you're a Democrat, you likely believe that this is a so-called scandal. Is a transparent attempt to distract from Donald Trump's far worse behavior. Yeah, he took documents. How bad? You may see the Hunter Biden obsession as the latest in a line of conservative conspiracy theories, joining Barack Obama's birthplace, John Kerry's Vietnam War record, and the suicide of Vince Foster. Great comparisons. Today's newsletter is for both readers who believe the case deserves more attention and those whose instinct is to skip any article about Hunter Biden. I hope to avoid committing the journalistic sin of false balance while explaining why the story deserves some attention from everybody. Oh boy. Cashing in. When top Democrats are asked about Hunter Biden, they tend to dismiss his problems as a private issue. Quote, Hunter Biden is a private citizen, and this was a personal matter, end quote, Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, said last month when asked about the federal tax and gun charges against him. Quote, the president, the first lady, they love their son, and they support him as he continues to rebuild his life, end quote. The explanation is partially fair, partially. Hunter has struggled with drug addiction. Yeah, he has, and we're well aware of this. His failure to pay taxes seems connected to the chaos of his life while he was using crack cocaine, and the gun charge stems from his claiming to be sober when he bought a handgun in 2018. Well, there's that. Also, he illegally disposed of it in a dumpster next to a grade school, which would get absolutely everyone thrown in prison. So would lying on the form to buy the handgun. That's a 10-year federal crime. The drug addiction, the taxes. If I didn't pay taxes, I would go to jail, but Hunter Biden doesn't. So that's why people have a problem with it, is we have admitted felonies and nothing happens to him. This should be good. But it's a stretch for anyone to suggest that Hunter Biden is merely a private citizen. When his father was vice president from 2009 to 2017, Hunter tried to create the impression that he could leverage his family's connections to help his clients, as former business partner has testified to Congress. Yeah, and we have lots of evidence of this too. Some clients believe it. Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company, put Hunter on its board in an attempt to signal that it was pro-Western. A Chinese tycoon also signed a partnership with him. All told, Hunter made more than $800,000 in 2013 and more than $1.2 million in 2014. So let's see if it in any way mentions the fact that Hunter Biden has zero experience in the energy sector. He hasn't ever run a gas company before. He doesn't speak Ukrainian. He doesn't speak Russian. What exactly was he doing at Burisma? He's not running anything in the company. He can't participate in meetings. He has absolutely nothing to give except for his name and access to his father. My colleague, Luke Broadwater, who covers Congress, told me that he initially found the public discussion of Hunter Biden to be uninteresting. Yeah, a corruption scandal involving the vice president's son, where the vice president got a prosecutor that was investigating the company that the son worked for. That's uninteresting, totally. Typical partisan noise, yeah. Right, like Trump hired hookers to pee on a bed because Obama once slept on it. That wasn't partisan, though. But Luke came to believe the story was more important. Many rich and famous people try to cash in on their family name, including relatives of politicians, Luke said. It's certainly worth newspaper coverage. Nice contradiction. Luke notes that Joe Biden made a false statement during the 2020 campaign debate when he claimed, "My son has not made money in China. The only guy who made money from China is this guy." Biden continued, referring to Donald Trump. Amazingly, Biden was correct about the Trump part. The Trumps received money from the same Chinese company. Okay, but he also lied when he said that his son didn't discuss any business dealings with him. Yes, he did. We have proof of that. So Joe Biden lied multiple times. These details are not pretty. The current president's son made substantial sums of money from the perception of his proximity to top government officials, and the president has claimed otherwise. The story is notably different from past Republican lies about Obama's birthplace or Kerry's war record. What's the lie about Kerry's war record? He didn't, Unsupported claims. The problem for Biden's Republican critics is that they are making their own untruthful statements, or at least statements lacking any support, like Trump hired a hooker to pee on a bed. That had no support. You ran with it. The Alpha Bank story, the Concord stories, Russia hacked the DNC. No, they didn't. Yeah, there was no support for any of the stories. Trump called Nazis fine people. No, he didn't. It's on tape, and you lied. House Republicans have claimed that the elder Biden himself received money as part of Hunter's business dealings. They have produced no evidence to support the claim, Luke notes. Except they've shown evidence that he got a $20 million bribe. Oh, and he worked for Ukraine, or Burisma in Ukraine, and had zero experience, so that money was a bribe. There's no legitimate reason. There's also no evidence that Joe Biden altered policy to benefit Hunter's clients. Yes, there is. The entire argument that Shokin, who was the Ukrainian prosecutor, was not prosecuting Burisma is just absolutely absurd beyond belief. So the story is that Shokin was not investigating Burisma, and the international community wanted the prosecutor removed. Now, we'll put aside from the fact that no other country gets to tell other countries what their prosecutors do or do not do. Let's just assume that what they're saying is true. The guy that replaced Shokin dropped all the charges against Burisma. The owner of Burisma fled the country when Shokin was investigating, came back when the investigation was closed. That's for you to believe that Shokin was not investigating him. And then for the guy to come back after the investigation is closed, how could Shokin have not been investigating when the other guy said there was nothing to investigate? It makes no sense whatsoever. And Joe Biden's on tape admitting that he got in a quid pro quo, which they impeached Trump for doing, but it was okay because that was stated U.S. policy. So apparently stated U.S. policy is to tell other countries, which is, Ukraine is a democratically elected government, sovereign states, etc. So why do we get to tell them that they need to fire their prosecutor because we don't like what he's doing? That makes no sense. Sometimes the Republican claims have turned farcical. House Republicans portrayed Gal Luft, a dual U.S. Israeli citizen, as a truth teller who exposed the Bidens. Luft has not done so. Instead, a grand jury indicted him last month for acting as an unregistered agent of the Chinese government and helping Iran evade sanctions. Luft denies any wrongdoing. So like a FARA thing, foreign agent registry. So like what Hunter Biden also didn't do. So once again, that's just disingenuous reporting on the Times part. For anybody who wants to dig deeper into the Hunter Biden saga, you could read the book Laptop from Hell by Miranda Devine, where she details all his crimes. I recommend this detailed article by my colleague Adam Intuis, Michael Schmidt, and Katie Benner. Here's the key sentence, quote, "The real Hunter Biden story is complex and very different in important ways from the narrative promoted by Republicans, but troubling in its own way," end quote. So how is it troubling in his own way? It's different than the Republicans. You admit it's wrong, but you don't say what's wrong. As Michael said to me, quote, "Should the vice president's son be selling the perception of access to his father, even if that son isn't delivering anything for that money," end quote. Well, he did deliver. He got a prosecutor that was investigating the company fired, so he absolutely delivered. Jonathan Shade of New York Magazine has compared Hunter Biden to the Supreme Court justices who have accepted large gifts from private citizens, quote, "In American politics, the worst abuses by powerful people usually involve clever ways to exploit the law without committing crimes," end quote. Yes, Trump and his family have profited much more from their government service than Hunter Biden has, but that isn't a fully satisfying explanation to many Americans. Perhaps, Shade argue, it's time for stricter ethics rules for the highest officials and their close relatives. How have they profited? Just a bunch of baseless accusations. Remember when you cried about Jared Kushner and his money from the Saudis? If there was anything illegal about that, the Democrats would have gone after him for it. But they haven't, because there's obviously nothing there. Just a bunch of unsubstantiated accusations, which is funny because remember earlier they said the Republicans were doing that, except it's really the Democrats. That's called projection. It's unsavory, but it's not a crime. It's a good argument for a defense lawyer. It's not a great argument for people who are in position to write new laws and whose survival depends on refuting the cynicism of pseudo-populists whose appeal is rooted in the corrosive assumption that every politician is on the take. Related. Wealthy executives have treated Justice Clarence Thomas to at least 38 vacations, including yacht trips and private jet flights. So again, it's bad. Rules for thee, not for me. So Hunter Biden has a slew of evidence of wrongdoing against him. The Times doesn't in any way address any of the criticisms and just says, no, he's fine. But this is totally unbiased. Hawaii wildfires, climate change, right? Of course, it's going to be climate change that's responsible for it. Maui is in crisis after fires killed at least 55 people. The wind that spread the flames is easing, but none of the fires are fully contained. The death toll was expected to rise. Emergency workers have been searching burned out properties for victims. Some survivors from the fire in Lahaina, Hawaii's former royal capital, say the flames reached them before evacuation orders. People escaped on foot, some holding children. In Lahaina, the fires destroyed streets and leveled hundreds of structures, satellite photos show. There it is. Climate change is here, and it's affecting the islands. Governor Josh Green of Hawaii said, no, climate change is not here. That's just a made-up term. Besides, it's global boiling now, and it has nothing to do. Wildfires are a naturally occurring event. They happen all over the planet. International, Iran agreed to free 5 imprisoned Americans. In exchange, the U.S. will release some Iranian prisoners and allow Tehran to buy food and medicine with previously frozen funds. Ecuadorian officials arrested 6 suspects in the killing of the presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio. I hope I said that right. All 6 are Colombian. West African leaders said they are activating a, quote, standby force ready to intervene against a coup in Niger. As I said before, that's not going to work. Those countries have much weaker militaries than Niger. Niger is going to stay the way it is. Russia launched a rocket intended to land a robotic craft on the moon in Russia's first lunar mission since the 1970s. Interesting. Politics. The Supreme Court temporarily blocked a deal shielding the Sackler family from lawsuits related to the opioid epidemic. The court will hear a challenge to the plan. I think that's probably appropriate, since seeing as how they lied, so they probably should lose most of their stuff. The Biden administration will spend $1.2 billion on projects to vacuum carbon out of the atmosphere, an ambitious but unproven tactic against climate change. Or you could just plant trees, since trees do that. You could also plant more grass. Grass produces more oxygen than trees. And if you really cared, algae. Algae produces like half the world's oxygen. So if you really cared about climate change, what you would actually be doing is encouraging people to not mow their lawns, because that would produce more oxygen, removing carbon from the atmosphere. And you tell everybody to cover their ponds in algae. But you're not going to do that because climate change isn't real. That's why Obama has beachfront property next to a place that's supposed to be underwater. They don't believe the things they say. It's just about control. Republican presidential hopefuls arrived at the Iowa State Fair, a political rite of passage filled with fried food and photo ops. Trump said he would not promise to support whoever wins the Republican presidential nomination, a requirement for the first debate. That's Trump. He always does that. Senator Joe Manchin told the West Virginia news station that he was thinking very seriously about leaving the Democratic Party. I suppose why not? Trump indictments. The special counsel has asked a judge to set a January start date for Trump's election interference trial. It's ironic because it's the special counsel who's interfering with an election by making up charges against Trump. Conspiracy against rights. That's my favorite one. In the other federal trial over handling his secret documents, Trump and his aide Walt Nauta plead not guilty to the new charges that prosecutors added last month. Trump's legal bills are straining his campaign funds, which is the entire purpose of this. The only reason why they're doing any of this is just to bleed the guy dry and prevent him from being able to go out and campaign, because they're afraid of him, which is pathetic because they claim he was so easy to beat. So why not just let the dude run and Joe Biden can handily defeat him again? He's the most popular president in all of history. Got more votes than Obama. I mean, it should be easy. Notably, the Times did not mention the fact that the Obama-appointed judge, who has been exceptionally harsh to January 6th defendants, harsh to Trump, but kind to Democrat people that are before her, gave him the standard for the local rules was 14 days to respond to a motion from the court. She gave him 3 days, and that included one of them being a Sunday to respond to the protective order. Now, so the left makes death threats about Trump's frequently. Kathy Griffin holds up his severed head. Snoop Dogg has a mock execution of Trump. That's all okay. But Trump says, and how many times has Nancy Pelosi said they're going to get Trump, or all the prominent Democrats, Ayanna Pressley, everyone from the squad has said they're going to get Trump. But Trump says, if you go after me, I'll go after you. And that's grounds for a protective order. And we're going to fast track everything, deny Trump's lawyers reasonable requests for a couple of days to look into this. They fined Twitter $350,000 for not complying with their secret subpoena, which they gave them just 3 days. 3 days to turn over all this data. And Twitter's like, hey, can we just look at this request? It's a reasonable thing. No, $350,000 fine. Gee, that's not in any way fascist at all. No. Totally what happens in a free and fair society. Other big stories. Consumer prices rose slightly last month. No, they rose a lot. They're rising a lot. So you lie through your teeth about inflation. Here's the real inflation. So this is what they say, this red line right here, this is the official. And so this is the 1990s version of it. So this is what we claim. It went down. Oh, look, it's still up over 4%. If we went on the 90s number, it would be a little under 8%. And if we use the 80s number, it would be around 13%. Now, why is this important? Because they stopped counting food, energy, utilities, and gas. Because you don't eat, you don't pay for bills, you don't put gas in your car. So why count those things? Now, inflation's great. $15 steaks is awesome. I mean, it was $6 in 2019, but $15 is not so bad. Economists said the numbers suggest inflation is continuing to cool. No, it's still going up. It's just not going up by 10% each month. It's going up by 4% or 6% or 8%. Doesn't matter. Prices are still going up. Wages aren't going up. But remember, this is a great economy. 30,000 jobs lost to yellow. But hey, great economy. Most employment ever. Totally believable. After the suicide of a participant, regulators halted human research trials at a Columbia-affiliated psychiatric center. Really? That's not good. Teenagers deserve the space and privacy to be teenagers and make mistakes, including online. Well, the things about that is there's a lot of predators online. I'm not sure how. Here's a column by Pamela on shoplifting. Well, that would be a short column. Shoplifting is wrong. Don't do it. But it's probably not going to say that. Extreme weather. When a storm is coming, who warns the chimps? The chimps don't care. Phil Mickelson's former gambling partner said the golfer had placed more than $1 billion in wages. I mean, I've always heard Phil was a gambler, but $1 billion, man. Gotta love that. A new high. Liverpool has agreed to a record $140 million transfer fee in order to acquire midfielder Moses. I'm not sure. I don't want to butcher his name. Literary landscape. Appalachia crosses half a dozen states, but its residents share a mindset. Small-town folk who rely on one another, who measure the time by planting seasons, who make things like quilts, music, and stories. Quote, it adds up to a literature as bracing and complex as Tumbling Mountain Creek, end quote, writes the novelist Barbara Kingsolver, who was raised in rural Kentucky. Kingsolver has written a guide to reading across Appalachia. It's a fun trail if you can ever walk it. Why? Why is it always just foul things with, what is that? Sesame seeds and a bunch of, why? Smashed cucumbers for this shrimp salad. Just get a steak. liquidity. Well, this is going to be a fun weekend. See ya.